Jane, let's see. Jane was raised in Wisconsin, went to college in Iowa. None of us seem to stay put, do we? And has spent the last 28 years in Kansas. Her Midwestern roots inspire the stories that she tells both in her books and on her blog, Postcards from the Heartland. After a lifetime of wishing to be an author, Jane finally began writing historical fiction in 2012. You'll love her Lottie series. Because she found her career so late in life, she loves to talk to kids about finding their path in life. In her free time, Jane loves to read, play with her Labrador, Mamie, and make spaghetti sauce. Jane, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Deb. And thanks everybody for joining this session with me. Before we get started, I'd like to have you do something for me. If you have a pen and a piece of paper, I want you to take that piece of paper and make two columns. In one column, I want you to label that column things I love to do. And I want you to label the other column things I'm good at. So things I love to do in one and things I'm good at in the other. And I'm just going to give you a minute or two to jot down like 3 things in each column, if you can think of them off the top of your head. I'm going to call time on this exercise, but if you come up with anything as we're talking along, like go ahead and write that down. I'm not going to ask you to share your answers at the end, but just this is for all of this is for your own use and your own thought about your life. Okay, again, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Jane M. Tucker, and I am a proud Midwesterner. In fact, it shouldn't surprise anybody that as soon as I'm done here, I'm getting on the road to go to Iowa to see my husband's family in Iowa. Well, professionally, I'm the author of the Lottie Braun series for Cross River Media. That's 3 books about a pianist from Iowa who has a tragic secret that defines her life. I define myself as a writer of historical fiction set in the Midwest. But that's not who I was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was a frustrated part-time preschool teacher who always wanted to write books, but didn't know how to start. I had a business degree that I had never really used. And I was teaching preschool because my kids were all finally in school. And I had done enough volunteering with my kids' activities and Sunday school and Bible study that I thought I understood what would be required. But in truth, I didn't. I worked with really excellent preschool teachers, and I knew I did not have what it would take to be excellent at that job. And I wanted to do something that I could be really, really good at. So I tried several times over the course of my adult life to answer the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I simply never got there. So I wonder if any of you can relate to that. Maybe you have reached, like maybe your kids are leaving home, or maybe you're doing a job that you're tired of and bored with. You've reached a bend in the road and you're wondering what's next, or how to fulfill your purpose better professionally, or even in a much more personal way. I love to talk to middle schoolers about this. I love to talk to them because I feel like we ask middle schoolers all the time, well, what are you going to do when you grow up? What do you want to major in? What kind of jobs do you want to do? And we don't give very many tools for our kids to answer that question. So kids only know the jobs that they have heard about or experienced. They know about teachers. They know about doctors and nurses. They've been told that engineering is a good idea for a career, but they haven't experienced the fact that there are a literal million job descriptions out there. And so they're sort of left with this real narrow definition of what they could be when they grow up. So, what do you want to be when you grow up? This is what I have middle schoolers do. I have them make 2 lists, just like I had you do. What are you good at, and what do you love? So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So okay, when I was 12, this is what my list, roughly what my list would have looked like. Here were the things I was really good at when I was 12. And I know it because people told me I was good at these things. I had the grades to prove it for some of them. And I also felt intrinsically that there was a satisfaction in me when I did these things. So here are things I was good at. I read constantly. I was good at reading. Writing was always fun, and it always earned me attaboys. I was good at math and telling stories, meaning out loud in front of the class. I was good at telling stories. Also baking, and I knew I was good at baking because I had the 4-H blue ribbons to prove it. Okay, so here were some things I loved to do. I loved to read. I loved to write. I loved to play the piano, to play cards, and being from Wisconsin, I love to ice skate, because if you don't make peace with winter in the upper Midwest by learning how to play outside in the winter, you just end up depressed for 8 months of the year. So ice skating was part of my life when I was a kid. Okay, so things I was good at, things I loved to do. And you'll note that they're not duplicate lists. In fact, if you made them into a Venn diagram, there are the things I loved to do, and here are the things I was good at. But really, the things that overlapped were reading and writing. And you could say that, I see I didn't get storytelling on here. You could say that storytelling belongs sort of related to the reading and writing also. Okay, I was good at math, but I never loved math. I was glad to be able to do it. And same with baking. And I loved to play piano, but I wasn't good at playing the piano either. That's why I grew up and created a character who plays piano like the best you could ever imagine someone playing it. So we have this sweet spot here, though. And if I had been paying attention, if someone had pointed out to me my overlap, I would have made vastly different choices when I got to college. So I say to you, as I say to the middle schoolers I talk to, pay attention to that overlap. The things that you both love and are really good at, they belong in your life. Now, if they belong in your life, that can mean that's how you should earn your living and make your daily bread. It could also mean that is something that you need in your life as an extra or as a hobby or a cause. And so that with that mindset, we're going to go forward. So here's a good exercise. I asked you to make those lists for today, for whoever you are and however old you might be today. But it can be a good idea to go back to when you were in middle school also and think about what would your lists have been then? Because when we are younger, we have a little more simple idea of who we are. And sometimes the things that we feel really strongly about when we're 12, they carry through to the rest of our life. And it's good to be in touch with those. So that is, if you are really searching for direction on your next step, I encourage you to just spend a little time thinking about how you would have worked out this exercise at 12. But ladies, we are not 12 anymore. And our lives are a tiny bit more complex than they were back then. So I am not going to leave you right here. I'm going to give you some additional lists to make and things to think about. Okay, first of all, make a list of your education and your experience. So you start out with the things you put on your resume, what you got your bachelor's degree in, or where you've worked for years and years, or all the workplace kinds of things. But don't stop there. If you've learned how to make the best loaf of bread you've ever tasted, put that down too. If you have education or clinics you've taken in software or other kinds of things, put that in your list of education and experience, your training. While you're making that list, think about what were the things I am glad I did and why, and what are the things I enjoyed and why, and what would I never ever want to do again, not even on a bet. You want to start thinking about what is my fit. So if you're taking inventory, these are questions you want to ask yourself. Okay, another list would be, what are your soft skills? So a definition of soft skills is your people skills. They include communication style and your social skills, your ability to build consensus, or your ability to lead people to something. Are you a people person, or would you rather mostly work alone? What are your personal strengths and weaknesses? Do you procrastinate? That would be a negative on your soft skills. Do you know how to give clear instructions? That's a soft skill. Okay, our third list is income need, and I'm going to add time constraints also. If you are looking to take a new step in your life, these are extremely important questions. So here I want to stop and say, if you are currently in a job that you find boring or repetitive or hard to go to every day, and that job is putting food on the table for your family, I can only commend you, because that is extremely important, and it is easily as important or more important than some kind of self-fulfillment. So your need for income is really, really important when you're thinking about what is my next step. And time, your thoughts about time constraints can go in a couple directions. Like, how much time do I have to add something new to my life? If you're keeping your job and you're looking to find purpose in an extra activity, how much time will you give that activity? If you decide, on the other hand, that what you really want to do is start your own business, are you prepared to spend 24/7 on that business for a couple of years? These are all things you want to think about. Okay. The next question that I have for you is, what would you want to change about the world? Now, this question is important. It was important in my own journey. And the thing I wanted to change about the world isn't going to sound mind-blowing to the rest of you, probably. So I've already shared that I'm a lifelong reader. I have always loved to read. And back in about 2010, I ran out of things to read. I couldn't find new authors that I wanted to read. And the authors I already knew and loved were not putting out new stuff. And I had some really impressionable teenage daughters in my house. So I had to be even careful about some of the things I could bring home from the library to try. So I was frustrated. I wanted a certain kind of book and I couldn't find it. And so late one night, in the middle of the night, I woke up feeling frustrated about this and decided if I was ever going to write books, now would be the time. And if I couldn't find the kind of books I wanted to read, it was time to start writing them. And by morning, by the time my alarm rang, I had the bare bones outline of Lottie Braun and her story. So what would you change about the world? What problems bother you? This could lead to new inventions. It could lead to opening a small business. It can lead you many places, this question. So make a little list of the things you would change about the world. And your next list, often the things we want to change about the world are already in the process of being addressed by others. And that usually happens when you're talking about a cause. So by cause, I'm talking about a social cause, a medical issue that needs to be healed, or, you know, your proverbial finding a cure for cancer. And if there is a cause that you're passionate about, whether that be like racial justice, as we've all experienced in the past few weeks, or foster care, or any kind of cause, I want you to expand your thoughts about how you might contribute to helping with that cause. Because if you feel passionate about finding a cure for cancer, I want to encourage you that you don't have to be a PhD scientist to make a meaningful contribution. You could take the skills that you have, which you've already thought about on your education and experience and soft skills lists, and you can use those skills in support of the whole framework of people who are working toward that cause. That could be as big as going to work for the administration of a research hospital. It could be something like becoming a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society, or it could be really as small as supporting chemo patients by knitting them caps. But all of those things could become part of your purpose as you work towards causes that you believe in. A little creative thinking could really help you see that your connection to that. Okay, so to recap, because I'm going to stop sharing now and you can just look at me. I know that I reached a point in my 40s, 8 years ago, where I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be the first human being who gets younger. I'm just going to keep moving on towards the inevitable and eternity. And if I was going to write books, it was time to do it. And I say to you today, wherever you are in your life, if you are feeling the need to take a new step, whether that's professionally, like I did, or whether that is in an extra way outside of your work hours, you can do it. As you're looking at what you might want to do next, talk to reliable, trustworthy people who know you well. Ask them to help you make your lists. Pray about every list you make, every time you think about, what do I want to do next? Bring the Lord into that conversation. And I'll just say, when I'm praying about something in an ongoing way, that for me is about 10 minutes every day for several days running. So I turn to the Lord, I open the matter with him, I talk to him about it, I ask him to bring light to it, and I'm sure I've talked to him, and then I am done for the day, and the next day I bring it back up. And for me, that pattern has done really well in helping me feel like he's in on conversations in my life. So I'd encourage you to do that. And make your lists. Keep them in the same place and return to them a little bit and see what you can learn about the way God has made you and where your sweet spot is professionally or personally, and move forward with him.